This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world. How's your week been? What's been on your mind?
Yeah, this has been, sales has been on my mind. So we migrated from Nimble, which is our CRM, to HubSpot, which is our new CRM. And migrating that data, there's been a lot of stuff that broke. Then you want to make sure that everything's in there. Thankfully, we don't have the number of leads that I'm sure you're dealing with. So, we have a couple thousand in there that were the ones that we really wanted to make sure got over. And then there's like the couple hundred that are like, these are the people we are constantly in communication with because they might be doing a project in the next couple of years, and making sure those notes are in there. But there was just a laundry list of minor challenges, we'll say, with it, and they've been ironed out now, which has been the bulk of my week.
So
What about yourself?
Mostly HubSpot integration?
Yeah, that has been my week. I mean, I could look back and see, but yeah, it was pretty much, it's been all sales all week. I guess a little bit of accounting at the beginning of the week. So we were sending out, we hit some big milestones on projects in September, which is really good. We've never had major milestone gates all signed off in the same week for multiple projects. So it's really cool to see the power of a team.
Yeah, that's great. And you definitely feel it when all the cash hits your account at the same time.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference.
Yep.
What about yourself?
Well, lately I've been really obsessed with the whole conveyor loading system revamp. So the kind of backstory there is that we had, Rev 1, which never really saw any customers. Then the Rev 2, which kind of split into two versions. There was the pneumatic version and the servo-driven that was built for the PLC control. And then there was the Rev 3, kind of Rev 3/4, which also is kind of an internal unit that's never seen the light of day outside of our shop. That was there to really get the repeatability to 1/2000th of an inch from like 5 or 6.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The big issue has always been like with the pneumatic lower cost installations that, we've had some customers who self-installed them, didn't bolt them to the floor. We have some people who just try to mess with the pneumatic flow control valves on their own to speed it up and then mess stuff up. So
Oh yeah, those loops get screwed up in a hurry.
Oh yeah. So I'm basically kind of all in right now on revamping the design for Rev 4. And
Okay.
the biggest thing with that is, I'm honestly pretty happy with the actual functionality of the design, but it needs a new HMI. And that's the big thing that I've kind of been obsessed with. And I get like that sometimes where I just research and literally I woke up at 4 a.m. and started researching HMIs, and now I'm sleep deprived.
No, I definitely understand that pain. We've built many of machines where we got the HMI done and you look at it and you're just disappointed. Like it's nothing to the person on the team that made the HMI back in the day or what it was. It was literally the tools or the software or the hardware we bought that limited the box or the flexibility of looks, functionality you wanted out of it. And that's the reason we just went to building custom HMIs. So having a dedicated software person where all they do is UI, UX for our machines.
Yeah. And this is one of those places where like being self-taught, I feel like is kind of biting me in the ass now, because
Okay.
when I built, I don't know, 40, 50 CNC machines of various varieties. And, the first ones I built when I was like 11 and 12. So of course I was using like the cheapest Mach 3 boards. And
Yeah. Been
that
there.
graduated to, K-flops and other kind of semi-industrial solutions. And I have realized that, we've been building all these Visual Studio things, interfacing with Windows. And I'm starting to realize, like, for our needs, I probably would have saved a lot of time and money if I would have just used like a normal industrial PLC from the start, be it
You
Click or
could.
Productivity or an Allen Bradley or whatever. Kind of realizing these like modules do exactly what we need. And yeah, sure, they're $2,000-$3,000 once you put all the stuff on top of each other. But man, like the amount of labor hours that we're putting in to build these HMIs to get not even as good of
Yeah.
a result.
Yeah. I'd love to see what you want out of them because I know the amount of IO that we were messaging the other night about,
Hmm.
it's more manageable within though. I mean, what we were using in the past was Maple Systems style HMIs. Those, there was some other Tiguar was one we used for a little bit, but that's more on the route of what we're doing now. But Maple Systems is probably the greatest comparison. They make a great product for most integrators. And that might be all you need for the flexibility you're looking for. It's going to be bubble style, drag and drop. Uh, you're trying to control a couple cylinders and conveyor, from my understanding.
Yeah, well, what's kind of funny too is that um, I'm so used to, Visual Studio, C Sharp, building, custom forms. For that reason, I don't really have any experience with like, ladder PLC stuff. And generally, at least at the scale that we've been at, I've always been the person who built like the first rev of something. And then, our engineers take over after, to kind of do that, either the busy work or the fine tuning work. And because of that, I've always avoided like ladder based or bubble based or drag and drop because I'm like familiar with the C sharp. And I'm
Understand.
also realizing, man, if we just even though I was looking at the productivity 2000, which is I think where we're going to land, realizing, oh, there's just a module that just plops into the little slot and it has just built-in relays and that's it. For less than the cost of buying individual DIN rail mount relays.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you're spot on. That's probably a great route for you to go down. Uh, Kind of on the topic of building all the CNC is, you've used Masso controls. That's what you had at the show, right?
Yeah. Yep. So it's like a
What are your
good
thoughts on?
So the thing with a Masso control, if you're building like a little CNC machine, man, like it's so impossible to beat it. They're 1,200 $1,300. You bolt it on.
Yeah.
It has a screen, an ESOP, a start stop button, an H or a little USB interface, and a full like 5-axis motion control platform all built right in.
Yeah.
You're not. It basically is doing everything that we would want and ever need. There's some little quirks that I don't love, like the way they did the syncing sourcing on the relays means that it's like impossible to use like proper industrial relays with it. But for the most part, it's just an amazing value for money. And I actually really pushed the Masso guys to see if we could get a version of their system that we could skin because we wanted to basically put our own kind of standard industrial HMI that has
Okay.
10
So white
buttons.
label at base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just wouldn't do it. So, it is what it is. I would have loved to use that control. It's incredibly powerful. If you're building a custom, like one-off CNC-esque machine, I don't even really think you can beat it. But the problem is it's just inherently limited by not being able to create a custom HMI to where, for a systems integrator like you or for, an OEM like us, it just isn't usable, which, the I honestly think that that would be an awesome direction for them to go. But, for now, we'll go with some, automation direct or Allen Bradley product and call it a day.
Do you need to have the controls directly integrated into that HMI, or are you fine having everything communicate up to your HMI and be able to get the flexibility still there? Because there are options you could still go with Click PLC or something and then still do a very nice HMI, more like an app.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that I've always kind of had the vision early on as we built machines that I wanted to have one universal platform that would have, 5-axis motion control and could do this and can do that. And we can build an HMI on top of. And I'm realizing like, okay, for the conveyor system, all we have to do is go buy a productivity 2000, 3000, a couple modules, and that's it. And then we can build a little drag and drop HMI in a matter of hours. Realistically, what that machine is doing, it's like 2 axes of motion with one adjustable set point. Like it has to communicate and watch some triggers from the UMC 500 or from the Doosan CNC machine, but it's rather trivial. And I'm kind of like,
Yeah,
oh,
so why overcomplicate it?
and I've been overcomplicating it for the entire 2-year product development cycle of the yeah. And the other thing I realized too is, man, like by using these kind of semi-industrial solutions for all this time, we've been really making it difficult on me and our engineering staff in terms of just interfacing with like 24-volt signals and doing this and that and the other thing. Where now we're going into relays rather than just having something that plugs directly in.
Yeah, and then the next thing you're going to run into is the number of communication protocols that you're trying to talk to.
Yeah.
So all the old NCs run, a serial or different. Now you're going Ethernet IP, either CAT. Uh,
Hmm.
and then you start working with stuff up and downstream and you get Profinet, you get all kinds of other protocols that are living out there. And become very evident that there's certain roads you have to go down unless you have a mountain of cash.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, that's one thing too, I think is what been my change in mindset. Like on the 15th, we're kind of raising our prices 10 to 30% across the board. And, because we've been talking back and forth and I've really realized, hey, our ideal customer now isn't who I thought our ideal customer was going to be at the beginning. And
Yeah.
with that, originally I thought the conveyor, we would try to, value optimize it down to be a $15,000 product. And now I'm realizing that we're actually having an easier time selling it at a $40 to $60,000 price point. And now it's very easy to justify, hey, throw that two, three, $4,000 HMI in it, get them done, get it to be
Yeah.
super industrial and super reliable, and just don't even think about that.
I think you nailed it right there. Reliability. I mean, I think that was a topic last call
Yeah.
as well, is that's what people want out of machines. It's uptime. It's, will this machine make me good parts day in and day out? Like, the longer I'm in manufacturing, the less I care about being able to eke that last little millisecond out of an
Of
operation.
course.
It's
Yeah.
just like, I'd
Eh,
rather just see it run 1,000 times straight and never have to worry about it.
yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I've definitely realized is like the coming from like a bootstrap company, a small company, especially having that background of where I'm self-taught and all these different things. I have a propensity to kind of underspend upfront, and it leads to kind of swelling labor costs at the back end of things. And now that I've really wrapped my head around, hey, process reliability and quality are everything in the industry of building automation machinery, the now it's very easy to swallow. Okay, we're going to put a PLC, we're going to overbuild everything and get it to be 100% process reliable. But kind of the thing that goes off of that, of where we're struggling on product lines that we've already done that. I'm thinking the two op automation palette. That's really become our bread and butter install right now, where we're doing those as semi turnkeys. And now we don't have the problem with the product. Like the product works super well, super consistently. We'll run thousands and thousands of cycles. Like we ran like 10,000 cycles at IMTS without a hiccup. And our issue now is actually customers who don't have that same mindset because they haven't been in automation as long, and they'll try to shave a quarter second off of a cycle time. They'll mess with stuff, and they'll end up breaking their own semi turnkeys, which is
Yeah,
becoming its own its own issue.
they save a quarter of a second on the 1,200 parts they have to run, and then it takes
Mhm.
them 3 days to get the machine back up and running, and that quarter of a
Oh
second
yeah.
is negligible.
Like, more times than I can count, Matt, what like, some of our customers have messed with, like, the dwell times on grippers and then ended up crashing them. Even though we have, like, multiple explicit instructions, do not mess with the dwell time on the gripper. It's still faster as in machine automation than opening a side door and then, having a UR robot, but now the challenge there is really making sure our customers understand, like, okay, here are the things you don't wanna mess with, and and it's always hard because we have, brilliant customers and kind of middle of the road customers, and neither of them really know which one they are, right?
Yeah, it's what we've seen for a lot of machines is we've reduced just a lot of the features, or not features, but the how easy it is to change certain set points for customers.
Yep.
So it's very common for us to just do security levels. So if somebody's just running the machine, they're hitting the play button. How do we make hitting the play button as easy as possible? And then making it as hard as possible for those people to go in and mess with anything, because their task is to make sure the machine is up and running, feeding it bars or plate on one side, inspecting on the other, and then having it some level of security. So if somebody wants to change the dwell point, all right, you have a security level of 3.
Right.
You are now being somewhat warned, like, all right, you're messing with things you need to know.
Yeah, and we had the same problem with, like, the pneumatic version of the conveyor loading system, which is actually the real reason we're retiring it, is, a lot of our customers who would do the self-installs just couldn't help themselves but to adjust the flow control valve knobs. They're like, "Oh, the conveyor can move in faster." And then, not
Okay.
understanding or not reading the documentation thoroughly enough to realize, "Yeah, we can speed it up, but it better be bolted to the ground," right? And now the customer runs this thing 1,000 cycles with the wrong dampeners installed, and then because we have the really soft dampeners and we're planning on a much slower travel, and they don't realize it, but now their entire conveyor system from the jerk of it, the deceleration when the conveyor extends is creeping over, 2,000ths of an inch a cycle. And then they say, "Hey,
Oh
what
yeah.
happened? We had a misload." And then, we look at the conveyor and it's like, uh-huh. So you didn't bolt it to the ground and you adjusted the flow control valves, right?
Yeah, it's a very real thing.
Yeah.
The machines bounce across the floor.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I mean,
So,
that
so
much
y-
moving mass is just
yeah,
gonna
like the
happen.
new one, we're just going and saying, okay, you have to bolt it to the floor, and we're going to servo control it, and
Oh,
we're
really?
doing these lockouts. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're requiring bolting to the floor for the conveyor system. I mean, when we land an NC, I don't bolt into the floor.
It depends. And we'll see if the current tested version has only ever been bolted to the floor, and we've kind of pushed the limits of what we can accelerate and decelerate it to the point where we could adjust it to where I never think a customer is going to say, "Oh, that doesn't accelerate into the machine travels fast enough" or whatever. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, we could definitely mess with the settings, but I guess right now, like the focus is just, we have a middle of the road um, kind of feed rate where we know it'll run 100% process reliability. For most of the conveyor systems, we're doing the installs anyway, so we'll just bolt it to the floor, even if it's 4 bolts,
Okay.
and then we don't have to worry
Yeah.
about it.
Perfect.
But that has, like, translated to, okay, well, like, we have all the fixes for this with the conveyor loading system, and then the question has become, "Hey, well, how do we fix that on the two-op automation pallet system?" And it's been a big enough problem for us where we've literally started considering writing our own, like, GUI software that's basically like a CAM program that controls all of the grippers and everything. That way, it's not kind of human readable G code because the issue is that, people will mess
Oh,
with the dwell
I know.
times and so yeah.
Well, you could lock. I guess why are they even being able to get access to that? Is my question.
Well, because like on the two-op automation palette, everything is like template based. So it's all done in one like set of nested G code. And the goal is that we go and hand this to the customer, and then I mean that's a whole other kind of can of worms of that we have like 4 hours of training built into these semi turnkeys, and we've actually had the issue that a lot of our customers aren't even taking the training. They're just, sending emails. And then it's like, well, we never went through the training process to take you through all the quirks and details to make sure you succeed. And then, they run into problems. So I'm still looking at how we can rework that process, really nail everything in so we kind of prevent, our customers from, undermining their own success.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. I was just trying to think like, is there a way where you could just have it as part of the because part of it's being the post aspect of it, right? So
Right.
now they can have access through the post. So how could you have it similar to your but when you post everything out in the camera, I mean, you can't lock anything. So it's
Yeah. Yeah,
you have
because
a
it's
you
all
have a
done like in
unique
human readable G code. Like where we've landed is okay. We're gonna make a version that on all the stuff that they're not supposed to mess with. We make it very clear in the comment. Don't mess with this. We're gonna remove all the comments made for editing on the external version so that we can kind of cross our fingers that people don't follow the G65s and just start messing with stuff. And
what you
then
should I wonder if you put a line so you're saying don't mess with it.
Mhm.
You should put like every time somebody messes with it, you should update your code like Jim, don't put their last name on this date crashed his machine because he touched this.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
ship your machines with that. Like customer XYZ crashed their machine because they touched this. And just put that right in your code.
Yeah. Just do not adjust
Because now
crash risk.
well, no, you have to
Yeah.
call it out because
Right.
it's very real when somebody's like, "Oh, Jim did this. He touched that. He crashed his machine."
Yeah.
It'd be just kind of funny.
Yeah, we should definitely make that more clear. Like, at least kind of where we landed right now is like the short term timeline is that we're going through I don't know like the sixth or seventh overhaul of the NC template for the two op automation palette programming, and we're kind of breaking it all into subfolders and we're gonna have an internal and an external version. But I think really where we need to go is almost make our own graphical interface that is basically just posting everything out like Cam would to where uh, it kind of has two big benefits. Number one, it makes it way easier for the customer to do because they literally don't even have to understand G code. And then number two, we're kind of able to, really our secret sauce of the two op automation palette. You can figure out how to build that. It's the programming in the back end, and we're kind of able to package that up in a nice little black box like a Cam system.
Okay. Yeah, Sounds like a good next step.
But yeah, that's probably a Q3 25, knowing where everything is on the timeline right now.
Yeah, it's always fun. You're like, oh, I could do this in XYZ hours. That's only
Uh
300 hours.
huh.
Why can't we just get that done? We've got 10 people here.
hmm Yeah, and it's never as many hours as you put on the Gantt chart. Nothing ever. There's always little hiccups out of your control that push the Gantts back.
Yeah, one of our team members likes to say the rule of pi.
Yeah,
It takes
multiply it
pi
by
longer than what. Yeah,
3.14.
yeah, that's how long it's gonna take.
That's
And
about right.
there's been many instances where he is correct.
Yeah. Have you done anything with your Gantt chart monitor or your Gantt chart kind of scheduling for your staff? I know that's kind of been kind of a pain point.
Yeah, so one plan. So yeah, we did HubSpot migration, and we're currently in a one plan migration. So a lot of software expenses for this month for us.
Yep.
One plan's the software we decided to go with that directly integrates with Microsoft. And it really is having three main features. One, it brings in all of our Gants, and we're making our Gants very top level. This is our resource demand of a mechanical engineer, resource demand of this type of software engineer. So we can make sure that we have, when we get to those points on, I guess, just the future, we don't have a bunch of projects that are overlapping, ME resources, EESE, and then we can adjust accordingly in the future. So do we need to hire somebody? Ideally, can we just readjust this schedule, still deliver to the customer in time without stressing our team out? Uh, Also with that, removing our time tracking right in there. So then that's going to yield to the third thing, which is more or less just dashboards and giving the team more visibility on priorities and project status of, what do we bid this at? This project was bid at, say, 3,200 hours. We're in stage one. We should have used just 30% of the hours. We're sitting at X%. Is that acceptable? Or what do we need to do in the future when we're bidding a project like
What's the
this?
software called? One Link? Is that right?
Uh, One plan,
One
I
Plan.
believe. Yeah, I say I believe, and I approve the purchase. Yeah, it is one plan. I recognize the
How
the
brutal
logo
is the
there, and then
pricing?
it's actually really
Oh,
reasonable. So we went down the road of looking at a lot of ERPs. We looked at this has been a challenge to step back on the scope of this. We've been trying to solve this challenge for about 18 months. It's
yep.
been one of those continuous improvements, maybe even closer to 2 years. It's been one of those continuous improvements that it just kept trickling out because we couldn't find the software that was cost effective for the value it's yielding for what we needed.
Right.
Uh, that was really the main one to it, because there's a lot of great solutions out there, but they're really expensive. Like, we had
Mhm.
multiple six-figure bids for, full MES ERP systems that solve everything and beyond. And it's like, that's way more than we need. We need overlapping GANs, time tracking in one so we can pour dashboards in. The team
Yeah,
member,
and to be fair,
Dylan,
I've heard a
Dylan
lot of
found
horror
this and it was
stories
awesome.
where, people do the $20,000 integration and then, for the thing that costs $70,000 a month. And then the risk is if it doesn't work. And for companies our size, that's super common because the complexity just outstrips the capacity to learn by an order of magnitude.
Yeah. So, I mean, I basically allocated one team member. His goal is that he's going to be on it for about 60 to 75% of his time for the next 2 months.
Gotcha.
So deploying it, bringing all our projects in, overlapping them, because it's very critical. Like, yeah, it seems like a lot to have somebody allocated for a couple hundred hours, but if we have one slip up on a timeline, that couple of hundred hours is so negligible. So it's just a huge value to have that, but far more cost effective than, yeah, six-figure solution.
Yeah, but I'm seeing like, $30 a user a month. Like the, if that
Yeah.
works, I mean, it could be a slam dunk.
Yeah, there's an initial integration with them that's a fee that we wanted just to pay
Oh,
for
there's always a
support. So
hidden
Dylan,
integration.
yeah, so Dylan's getting the support he needs so he can do it correctly. And then after that, I think a business of our size, we're looking at, I guess I don't even know what their NDA is of what I can share of
Yep.
pricing. But yeah, you're seeing the rough pricing. You can probably do the math from there. There's a couple there's different levels, admin and then users. So let's just kind of go at that route.
Yep.
So you're similar to your Microsoft users cost per year.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna follow along with that one because Notion is great, but we'll probably outgrow it at some point, which is why, we ended up moving to that other software, Smartsheets, that just was too complicated to do too little. But I definitely wanna follow along, see how it's working for you because the that was kind of the dream for us, that we have the Gantt chart, so we have time tracking tied to them that follows customer projects and accounts and, ideally even ties back to billing. So yeah, keep me updated on that.
Yeah, there are some billing features in here you can do. We elected to do limited portions of that. We're just tracking the hours there and then assigning team member allocation. So really our team can see, all right, we bid this project at say, 500,000, we allocated this number of hours. Are we still in the black on it? Are we
Right.
trending correctly on the finances? But yeah, you could turn into a full probably bidding and billing out of it too. But we just decided we're going to export that data and take it into QuickBooks. We'll do our project accounting there because that's where all our POs and accounts receivable are occurring. We're going to keep these two separated.
Yep, for sure. Well,
So
that's
yeah,
really neat.
good
Yeah,
questions.
we get like kind of caught up in the boring stuff because that's what we're focused on. I feel like there's not actually that
Yeah.
many machinists who are also running a shop or who are still listening. And if you guys are, awesome.
Yeah. I mean, those are the people that are probably still listening are the ones that are trying to go from, all right, we're just teetering at maybe getting to $1 million.
Yeah.
That's their real goal is let's break that $1 million because that's a huge milestone
Hmm.
for every business owner to hit. But they're thinking, how do I get to 10?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
they're they're
That's what
they're
we're thinking,
beyond a
right?
lifestyle. Yeah.
It's like, okay, we've been floating between, $1 and $3 million for a while. And how do we push it to 10? And how do we do so, sustainably and without going crazy?
It's exactly it. Sustainability is the big one. I mean, I think we've both had those growing pains where we saw kind of that boom and then it's like you have the ripple effect. There's a lot of stress that comes with the back end of that. And it's like, man, if I could just maintain 40 to 50% growth, that's really cool
Hmm.
too.
Yeah.
If you can remove a lot of that stress from the team, because the last thing I want to see is turnover on the team. You
Right.
just
Of
gotta,
course.
I mean, and you can burn people out very otherwise.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, if you start pushing on overtime too much, if you don't have enough flow of projects, or, in our case, product sales, like if things seasonally ebb and flow, it gets really difficult.
Mhm. Do you see, so we're going through some of our marketing stuff
Hmm.
with our agency, and that was one of their questions. Like, what do you see for seasonality? And ours is not so seasonal, but it might just be because of how limited our sales are. What do you see? Is it a huge push at the end of the year for you guys?
Um, so we have had these like multiple different businesses, right? So each one kind of has their own rules. The actual contract manufacturing business is essentially completely retired at this point. The we're
Awesome.
offloading our very last client this month, which is awesome. So we're
Congrats. Are
basically
they going somewhere local or?
no. It's just the project's concluding, right? This was
Oh, all right.
a very couple $1 million project that's stretched out for 3 years at this point, and that was really the last one that we continued servicing. But that one we definitely saw, and I assume most job shops kind of see this. I'd say the summer months are kind of slow, and kind of the like the mid season um, times. So like the beginning of the year and the end of the year, running a job shop were always pretty hectic, and then lots of ebbs and flows. With I would say kind of March would be the slowest, and then followed by a string of a couple months in the summer. But
Yeah,
we're not
March is
really dealing
always
with that
that
anymore.
weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
The engineering consulting is really just like who are your clients, what market are you in. There's not a real rhyme or reason. At least what we've seen is not so much seasonality, but incredible dependence on the economy, which is just incredibly problematic. Because as a company that does essentially almost exclusively industrial blue sky R&D projects where the thing doesn't exist, it's only theoretical. The issue is that when the economy tanks, when money gets more expensive, when people aren't able to raise venture capital, that's when all of our clients cut their very first and largest variable expense, which is us. So that has a very close tie-in with the economy. And then the automation business has a very big seasonality in that people will try to do things at the end of their fiscal year. So that's part of the reason I have the real push right now to get that conveyor system really finely tuned. So we're shipping out the Rev 4s. Is that I want to make sure that, come November and December, we have the Rev 4 perfectly polished, ready to go, because this is the time of year where people are putting in 40, 50, $60,000 POs.
Yeah, this is usually where we're seeing a lot of bidding happening. And then there's going to be the few that want to get some of the money spent this year. Or very common to see those POs come through in Q1 for us. So we'll see how this year plays out. Like you said, politics always at play, but you know, let's just get
Yeah.
it over with and move on.
Yeah, I think, the automation business is definitely the most stable for us. The manufacturing business has had kind of standard seasonality. The automation business is predictable, and that we know, Q4 is where we have a real ramp up every year.
Yeah, we still do some plate machining, and that's very ebb and flow. I mean, we have a Datron with the BBM on the way, and it seems like we do a couple very unique projects a year for contract machining because people know what we can do.
Yep.
And that's what we do for ourselves or have done in the past for a lot of people. But that's really it. So those are so unpredictable. And those are the reason that's even at top of mind is we had one come in today where it's
Right. Yeah.
making a bunch of anode and cathode plates
And I
for the
say we don't do any
hydrogen
contract
market.
manufacturing, but what I really mean is we turn down every work every job that doesn't pay five, six, $700 an hour, because we have enough, specialty machinery there. There's a point where it becomes worthwhile, but the those jobs come along, but it's like one or two a month, right? It's not something that's common.
Yeah, the turning out the standard widgets isn't what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
If we're offering any service for manufacturing, we want to leverage our team's expertise and years of knowledge.
Yeah. So like, over time, we've just mostly kind of shed clients by just raising our minimums and increasing our hourlies. So like with the manufacturing side of the business, like we'll still take work, but we tell everyone, hey, we're a month out, $10,000 minimum. We need to be making at least $500 an hour, and that churns 99% of clients. And the ones that are still there with a special enough project that occasionally we'll address it, but it's not. It's never even coming across my desk, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Seems like a
Oh,
solid
I have
approach.
one question. So you guys have like a little
Yeah,
bit of inventory. One thing that we've been
very
looking at
small.
doing is revamping our inventory system. I guess the first thing is like, is inventory of any parts or components or things an issue for you guys? Do you have any systems there, or is it just kind of seat of your pants?
That is a really good question that is classified as a continuous improvement in 2025.
Yep.
That'll be one thing we're addressing. There's already been, I think it's a $15 or $20,000 budget we're putting towards just the organization aspect of it and allocating it. What we run into for inventory challenges on our side is, all right, we use Festo cylinders, Festo
Right.
connectors. We have these types of cable ends. We have, these miscellaneous electrical components and mechanical components that go in every machine. And it never fails when you go to order bulk of those for that machine. You miss one, you
Of
strip
course.
one, you
Yeah.
drop one, you know, stuff happens. And then those are the things that end up, how'd we lose a week on a timeline and build? And it's
Mhm.
like, well, I had to order XYZ because we ran out of stock. And it's like, yeah. So that's the stuff we're really trying to inventory and just go to a Kanban system on that. I mean, it's your timing's impeccable. One of the team members just ordered one of those large U-line shelves with
Mhm.
whatever, like
Yeah.
100 bins in it. And they're out there laying out stuff and basically making a list of, what's really, or testing a few things of what's going to be needed next year to improve this.
Yeah, and we have been on this journey for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months where, we created a Kanban system, and, we bought one of those, like, little school ID printers,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
we would print out the little card, and the workflow just never got as smooth as I would like. We had our kinda database in Notion where, we have our min maxes, but then, actually creating cards was a bit of a pain. So, the long story short is, I'm starting to consider, various systems, like, Arta is the one that comes to mind that,
Yeah.
seems like it's kind of at the right price point and the right scale. We looked at them before, but it kind of looked like it wasn't far enough along. And, now they've added pictures and a lot of other capability to where it might make sense. Because I'm really starting to think that's another one of those places where, by building our own system, we, created more more challenges for ourselves, and probably kind of shot ourselves in the foot again in terms of just, trading money for labor hours and getting a worse result.
No, it's a fair analysis, and we're not far enough down that road. I know we're still evaluating a couple things for the tests. The team is just doing an Excel spreadsheet or something within SharePoint,
Yep.
and then we're taking note cards, scribbling on them, or scribbling, but we're writing out the part number, where we order it, etc. Kind of a little, or who's responsible for ordering it. They laminate those and they put them kind of in a red ticket area. But it's just a prototype to figure out what our workflow needs to be. We've accepted that that is going to get scrapped. So MVP this, don't over perfect
Yeah,
anything.
fail
If
fast, fail cheap.
you're exactly. So that's what the goal is by the end of the year, is continue to kind of do those failure points, and then next year really solve the problem.
Cool. Well, that's a good answer. So you guys aren't quite as far along as us, but I think it's also not as big of a pain point, right? Because you're building much more customized machinery.
Yeah, it hasn't been a pain point until we've had more projects in parallel, and then inventory gets pulled from both. And it's like, oh, I thought we had like 10 extra of these. Like, oh, I did two and I used them for this project. It's like, oh, I was planning on it for my project, just that.
Right.
Okay, we just need a pull system.
I almost wonder, and you probably have considered this, but is there justification for like swapping standards for vendor availability? Like, I don't know if you guys are like us and have a 6-figure annual McMaster account, but
Yeah.
is there a justification for saying, okay, yeah, even though it's more expensive, we're going to buy these parts from McMaster or from Automation Direct or whatever, and then get away from your Festo distributor and get a functionally identical component and try to do that across a wider subset of parts.
Yeah, we do a decent amount of that. We haven't perfected that process. We've really targeted the expensive stuff first, or where we were really seeing. I mean, Festo's a good example. There's many areas you can buy those from, many distributors, many routes you can go. So the team's been good at finding more cost-effective routes on that. I think of another good example around that the team heard. McMaster to like Granger.
Yep.
Like, then there's another bolt company the team's found too. Like, if we're willing to wait 2 weeks and we buy it in bulk, there's ways to get far more cost-effective solutions. So we'll bulk up. Like, if we're stocking for framing bolts, I mean, they show up in
Right, like
like
for T-slot extrusion or
boxes. You
something.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, you can barely pick the boxes up.
Yeah, that's the hard part, and there have been lots of vendors, especially at IMTS, who have tried to get us to swap away from McMaster. We spent a lot of money with McMaster, and the difficulty is just really the capex, like inventory on hand issue of, okay, if we just look at our machine components, we have 200 unique parts, but then we go out and we look at every single bolt, and I don't even want to think about how many unique components we have. The nice thing about McMaster being in LA is that we can order it before 11 and it's there before 5.
Oh,
And
you get same day.
yeah, so we get same day, and we can
Oh,
even courier
that's
it if we need it
addicting.
in an hour. But the benefit of that is that it means that even for bolts, even if we're paying 30-40% more, there's the benefit that we can just go and set up an order, and we can have relatively low min max Kanban quantities and still and operate kind of super lean from a cash sitting in inventory perspective. But we're still paying too much, right? So it means the
I
COGS of
was
all
just
of
gonna
our
say
things get
that
higher, but
sounds
we
like
have less money tied up in inventory.
yeah, I was going to be very candid there, Michael. That
Yeah.
that sounded like an excuse to
Okay.
not solve the real problem.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think you're probably going to find out that you can probably put $20,000 on your balance sheet next year, if you're spending 6 figures,
Oh, I mean,
by
like
just
even right
planning on the
now,
inventory.
I think we're carrying probably $50,000 of just inventory on our balance sheet. Um, and,
Well,
and
I'm
it,
saying I'm saying
oh,
cash to the
absolutely, yeah,
bottom. So
absolutely,
on your P&L, I guess bottom line would technically be the better way to put it. So uh you could probably see 20 grand. I can see that. So where's the 5 grand? Focus on that in Q1. Like,
right.
all right, 80-20 this. If I spend 5 grand with a different supplier to test this out, where has the biggest impact? And just have your team tackle that for the first quarter, and you're gonna start seeing a
Right.
snowball
Yeah,
effect
that's a
where
good point too. And I think there's kind of this duality of thought that now that we have these two classes of clients, the engineering consulting R&D, when you're doing that, it's worth it to have the part there next day because you might have not even known that you needed the part, right? And
oh
then on
yeah.
the automation product lines, it still probably makes sense to leverage McMaster and Automation Direct and these more expensive quick services right away when you're building the first rev of something. But then, once it's
for
a
sure
repeat,
there.
we probably need to more aggressively move over to lower cost vendors.
That might just so I think you just nailed it right there. That's a SOP
Right.
within your stage gate to go to production. So stage gate product development prior from all right, prototype, we're just transitioning to product development. Have we got approved suppliers of XYZ before we offer this to the market and have we inventoried them from them? That could just be a quick one and you don't worry about the legacy stuff and you just move forward.
Right. Yeah,
That's
that's definitely true. Yeah, and I think
just
too, like
ideas.
what makes it hard is that, we have I think really everyone in the company has innovation like so deeply in our blood that we love to move fast, move on to the next thing. And especially given that I usually will do the first rev or maybe the first couple revs of a new prototype, whether it's a new gripper or what have you. We're using McMaster and either our internal machining or local machining services, and a custom couple of gripper revs can cost 20 grand. And
Oh yeah,
it's like,
I believe
okay,
it.
well, the bolts in there are McMaster. We could save $5 in bolts if we got them per part. But
Yeah.
when you multiply
Rounding
that
error.
across 500 or 1,000 grippers a year, the cogs, the amount of money we save is actually considerable. And I think probably we need a little bit of a mindset culture, innovation in cost savings as opposed to just physical innovation.
Yeah, we drive it as like, how do we get the most value to the customer?
Right.
Is the comment. I mean, I had a conversation with a team member this morning where it was about radii on a part. And he's like, "Yeah, we care a lot about industrial design." And
Right.
he was definitely pulling on my strings of like things I like to hear because they were really caring about the looks. And it was like, all right, this is one where we just need to let the looks go, which is really tough for Matt
Right.
to say. Because are we adding value to the customer at this point, or are we just trying to service something that's for us? I mean,
Yeah.
both have their balance there, but at the end of the day, it's we have to yield high value to the customer.
That has been on my mind a lot too, there's this delta I've seen consistently between, like, perceived value and actual value, especially with our in-machine automation product line. The reality that I've seen is that, you know, the first thing I've kinda recognized is we just can't really charge what the actual value delivered to the customer is in the same way like an external automation robotic system can, because people feel like they're getting this big fancy robot versus this little end effector that goes into the machine, right? And the value delivered over time, like the ROI is usually kind of the same, right? And of course our big benefit is that, we're charging an order of magnitude less. But really the question that kind of from the start of offering these in-machine automation solutions has always been, well, how do you find that balance and how do you convince the customer like that the where do you end up charging between perceived and actual value created when there's a big a very large delta between the two. I don't know if you have this problem because you're just building things that have both high perceived and high actual value.
You know, it's I was trying to think of a good story for that or relation to it because it is something we commonly see where customers that are new to custom machines,
Right.
uh, yeah,
They
actually,
think it's
here's a
way too
good way.
expensive, right? I assume, right?
Yeah, so there's been this perception that because UR has done an awesome job of creating
I know where
advertisement
this is going.
for
Yep.
getting exposure to the cost of a robot. And that's great. That's the cost of the robot.
Right.
That is not the cost of all the other parts, the engineering, all the integration to build that thing, deploy it for your
Right.
company, and train you. If you want a full service, you know, company to do that for you, there's a lot more cost. And that cost of the robot might be less than, 20% of what we're
Hmm.
really seeing for the total cost of the integration. And when you show those numbers, that's where we see the like, holy crap, like I can't afford this or I can't do this. And it's like, okay, that's reactionary. Let's step back and look at the math and then let's decide based on that. And so there's definitely an educational component and asking the questions like, all right, how many people are we gonna put into a higher value position, on your factory floor? Can you even staff those people? So are we making your yield go up on that equipment and other stuff around it so you can increase your top line revenue? Do you have a quality issue? Does that have a dollar associated with it? Has anybody been injured on this in the last 5 years, or have you had a near miss? All those things become real tangible dollars in at that point, and you can quickly decide on a 5-minute phone call. I mean, this could be a plug for our ROI
Mhm.
calculator YouTube video, where we kind of educate on that, on how to calculate these things. But you can quickly see, all right, rather than thinking this is expensive, think of it, how much can I spend? And calculate it that way. So reversing the ROI
Right.
calculator, looking at all those cost value adds that you have, and then seeing, all right, with all this displacement, I can spend, $680,000 on a piece of automation equipment. Now let's go see if somebody can build me a machine that meets that budget, is the way we've been approaching it. And that's the way we'll go in with customers that, are new to automation. It's let's see what the opportunity is for you. And then from there,
Yeah, make
we'll
make the
we'll build them a
customer
machine to
focus on
suit.
value, right?
Yeah, but then build the machine to that budget if it's possible,
Right, which it
or
often
tell them
isn't,
that you
yeah.
can't. Yeah, well, actually, it often is when we go about it that way. I mean, we do say that, all right, if we're not displacing more than 3 people total, this probably isn't going to be a high opportunity, but we'll look at it.
Right, gotcha.
Uh, and so now it's getting to the point where people are saying, all right, we have 3 people on this task, and that can be split across 3 shifts. So you could have one person doing something, but one person on each shift, and then you can get that ROI.
That kinda makes me wanna ask a tangential question. Obviously,
Go
you're
for it.
servicing these, 6 and seven-figure projects. Really everything you guys are doing is associated with building a piece of, CapEx equipment. And of course, generally from a kind of standard business perspective, assuming you're not, some venture-backed, burn money company, the are you guys dealing with, the financing of these machines? Are customers financing them, or are the customers just large enough that they're, able to take, the $1 million over the 12-month, course of the project hit in cash? What are you kinda seeing on average?
In it, I don't have an average
Okay.
there. We've seen all the above. I mean, we've seen people running it on their line of credit.
Yep.
That might be the most common, I would say, because like you said, they can roll it over 12 months.
Right.
Some people are financing it or rolling it in with a larger acquisition of a company or something like that. We've seen, uh, there's, there's been many ways that people are trying to finance it.
Yeah, and I think what's
But
hard too is it's not like an established piece of equipment where you can find a bank that will finance the equipment with the secured asset of the, CNC machine, for instance.
that's actually changing. So we
Okay.
have this might be a solid plug for some of
Yeah.
our financing relationships, is people that don't have somebody that'll back that because of a relationship they have. We do have people that'll cover the 48 states that we can give you a list of references based on our credibility as building custom machines, and they'll finance machines that we're building.
Oh, that's really cool.
So if somebody doesn't have something, I don't, I tell all of them, I'm not going to say that you're our exclusive finance.
Right.
I'm going to give a list of, the ones that I respect and have enjoyed doing business with. They'll make the list, and
Of
we'll
course,
go
yeah.
about it that way.
And
So
usually
I
too,
just,
there's gonna be a different bank you'll recommend for A credit versus B and C credit. Um,
yeah, that I don't get into any of the credit
right.
ratings or asking them about that. I give the same list of people that I recommend. Maybe there's a region limitation on some of it, on who we can send that way, but I don't want any liability with the financing or claiming that
Of
I
course, yeah.
misrepresented anybody. These are some options that I respect.
Have you had anyone like, default on a loan on an active project or just, stop paying you? Is that something that's happened I know it's happened, just from how long you've been doing this, but
Yeah, we've definitely been in that pain point. It's not a fun one, I'll tell you
yeah.
that. Where it's things happen with your customers that you don't foresee or didn't know were coming, uh, and it impacts your business.
Oh yeah, I'm well aware of that on the engineering consulting side, right? Being that first and largest variable expense is, and you guys are probably not. I think you're generally on the custom machinery side serving bigger businesses. I mean, even on the automation side, we're serving generally businesses. I don't know, half an order of magnitude bigger than who we're serving on the blue sky R&D consulting projects. So there's less instability, but the when the project hits the milestone and then the deposit doesn't come through, that can leave you in an interesting position.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Interesting position.
Yeah, that's it can leave you with a lot of stress, and that's where having enough cash on hand and having a backup plan is always a something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah, we could probably go maybe a conversation for some beers sometime in person.
Yeah, virtual beers. We'll just drink on the middle of a
Yeah, there you
Thursday.
go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to just random podcast thing, give Andrew Henry a shout out. I chatted with him and he gave us some like solid recommendations on the podcast. One of which is
Okay.
to even out the audio levels. So we're gonna make sure you buy that mic, Matt.
You got it.
And
That'll
then I'm gonna add
happen.
an outro and try to clean some stuff up, and I'm gonna move to probably off of Descript to get the editing a little bit cleaner. So hopefully next week we'll have some improved audio coming through.
Awesome. Well, thank you. You said Andrew Henry
Andrew
for that
Henry,
feedback?
the Henry Holsters. He's on
Oh, yeah. Okay.
the Jay and Jay or on the podcast with Jay Pearson. The what is it? The Lean Belt podcast.
Okay. Yeah. I really appreciate the
The
feedback.
one we're copying the most closely because we like the format, and I think
Okay.
it's one of the more
Yeah.
businessy ones as well.
Yeah. Sounds like a good approach.
And speaking of podcasts, I want to steal the Within Tolerance guys. Dylan from Protein Machining. I want to steal his question for you. Um, he asked this to everyone, and I'm just a podcast junkie, so I thought this was like a good like towards the end of the episode question. Has there been anything like on your mind that you've been researching or obsessed with this week?
HubSpot.
HubSpot, yeah. When we
Yeah.
went down that rabbit hole, we
Yeah.
just hired a sales guy who knew HubSpot way better than we did.
That's probably where we're headed.
Have you looked at doing there's a lot of, like, paid services and even Upworkers who will do, a lot of that groundwork on the HubSpot integration, for or with you.
We do have our marketing agencies doing a lot of
Okay.
it. It's just there's still a good amount that I need to be involved with. And then we're also in a follow up with a lot of sales leads right now. So it was kind of good timing in that I was already spending a lot of my time in there going right down the list. And then since I was in there, I was like, all right, I'm going to help with a couple of these things because I'm already reaching out to these people. And then I noticed, oh, I can increase my workflows and I can become more efficient if I do these things. So then it kept snowballing. But thankfully, I said that was my main task for the week.
Yeah. You're gonna be super glad that you went the HubSpot route, I think. Just the email tracking, the capacity of what it can do. I mean, we run quotes and invoicing through there for the automation side of our business. But it's just generally I wanna say great, but I really mean good. But it's just good at so many
Yeah.
things that it makes the cumulative great.
That is what I have heard from a lot of people is it's good at a lot of things.
And
And
the
so
other
it's
thing,
kind of
Matt,
that
that I
jack
wanna
of all
keep pushing
trades.
you on, you gotta start that email newsletter or, something similar because just those touch points are just gonna put develop LLC in the back of people's heads, and I know you at
That
least
it
have a big email list already.
Yeah, we have the email list, we have the blogs and educational content. It's just been automating that, putting people into the right funnel. And that is so we are currently approaching Pack Expo,
Yep.
which is about 3.5 weeks out. And so our goal is to have one drip campaign laid out for reaching back out to those people so we could test that and then starting to build our funnels through what's coming in online. But that I don't know about setting that up. So we're really relying on a marketing agency. So
Gotcha.
definitely heard you on that
Um,
feedback.
with IMTS, we, purchased this kinda, like, email list integrated thing where, it lets you send emails to the attendees. Is it something similar, or are you just
We what we get for pack and automate is you still scan all the badges and you export that as like a
Gotcha.
CSV. And then you take that into, in the past, we use Nimble, and I'll take it into HubSpot and we segment our leads. So, all right, 5-star being somebody that's, wanting to buy, they have the authority to buy and have a project that aligns with us. they get a very personalized
So
email
we do
from me
that too.
or
I wasn't talking about like the badge scan into the CSV. I was more
okay,
talking about generally, and I know this is true at least with IMTS and Automate. The AMT does AMT run Automate? They do, right? Or am I wrong there?
uh A3 runs
Okay,
automate.
but all of them
Interesting.
generally have like a kind of email list that'll rack up between 10 and 40,000 emails, and it's like its
Okay.
own. It's almost like the HubSpot or other newsletter builder, but it's in their own system because they hide the emails from you. But the big benefit that we saw with that with IMTS is we're going and sending literally just duplicate newsletters, but to this email list of 30 40,000 people, and we were able to get a fair amount of traffic, far more traffic than our paid ads that were on the little shuttle buses from at IMTS. We were able for $3,000 $4,000 to get a huge amount of kind of pre lead gen that then led to the booth, that then led to the conversation, that then led to more of those badges being scanned and as a qualified lead.
That's interesting to know. Hmm, I have to check that
And
out.
there's all kinds of third party services too. After we paid for that one, I can't count the number of third party services
Oh
who
yeah.
somehow who got the email list supposedly, and were
Yeah, see,
trying to sell the same thing.
I always get those third party ones and like Automate's always like, don't buy any of these lists. They're not we're not representing them, stuff like that. And so I've just always been like, I'm not touching this. It just
Yeah,
seems so
I've never bought a list, especially like the IMTS ones, because I've always just been afraid that like your $1,000 is just gonna. It's always some like no name URL. It feels like you're
yeah,
gonna spend. Yeah,
they went on Google and bought a list and sold it to you. It has no
right.
correlation to
Mhm.
people at
Or
IMTS.
they went and scraped the Zoom info a year ago, and they're in the
Yeah.
business of selling lists. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, definitely should look into that. I haven't really spent any money on that. What we're doing different is, and maybe I said this on a previous podcast, is we're giving out honey at this trade
Oh
show.
yeah, yeah.
So honey jars from our family farm.
That's really cool.
See where it goes.
Have you seen the
But
movie The
you asked,
Beekeeper?
yeah, I have seen that. Yeah.
I don't know why, but that just came to mind. Like you were some like secret CIA agent with a a farm and a
Oh, well, thank you.
yep.
So you asked me what was on top of mind. What's been on top of mind for you?
Well, for me, it's just been the PLC thing. I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
man, I could have been doing these things so much better. Just an industrial HMI. It's not that much money. But man, like I actually kind of hate how obsessed with stuff I can get because like I got
Oh,
obsessed with
yeah.
solving this problem, and Priscilla, my fiance, was just like, you got to stop working. And then she's like, go away, go play video games or something. And I popped open Call of Duty, and then what's on the side, Automation Direct, how to program the the 2000 PLC series, and I'm just watching like every video in the background, and I got to the point where I'm like, I got to stop. And then I luckily kind of zoned out for like an hour, went to sleep, and then literally at 4 a.m. I like get up to pee, and then my brain is like, well, what if we did this with the PLC? Like how do we program the HDMI, or sorry, the HMI? And then I'm watching another YouTube video, and now I'm up for 3 hours thinking about. So I'm kind of sleep deprived.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. I know a lot of people that lose sleep and try and, or that are in business and just wake up. It's pretty rare for me to lose my standard sleep schedule. Now my standard sleep schedule is somewhat limited at times, but it's, you know, losing sleep in the middle of the night is something I struggle to relate with.
Yeah, so I got into work late, and I'm not happy about the schedule, but, at the same time, when I go into these modes, it's like when we get so much done in so little time, it's hard to, like, be mad about it, right?
Oh yeah, it's addicting. Like
Mhm.
that is so addicting.
Oh, yeah, and with my first company, I did the startup thing, I raised a bunch of money, and, I lived in the office, and I lived, like, in this obsession mode for, like, years, which is
Yeah.
terrible and unsustainable, don't do it. But the flow feeling, yeah, it is awesome, but at the same time, like, you gotta build a real life you enjoy generally too. So
It's interesting because I heard a line that like entrepreneurship is like the worst addiction on the planet because while it's addicting, it's also positively reinforced by everybody around you because of,
right.
oh, I can't believe you got that done, or the aspect of being able to accomplish things. So then you're constantly like, oh, I got to do more. I gotta beat that
Mhm,
next
mhm.
one. And so
I don't
it's
know if you
like,
have
it is
this
just a crazy.
too, but I have this like thing where I kind of go into like a positive feedback loop all the time, where like things are going well, and then I work more, I focus harder, like and things kind of like stack on top of each other, and then also
Yes.
when I feel like the rug has been pulled, I don't work as hard, I can't focus as well, and so I can have that positive feedback loop in a negative direction too, which you know I. I have really practiced and tried to become disciplined about understanding that it's not as good as you think it is or as bad as you think it is. Um,
Yeah.
but
That's a good, good
it takes a
perspective.
lot of effort for me to intervene on the downward spirals, and also to make sure I don't go too crazy on too many R&D projects on the upward ones.
Yeah. I think it just comes down to discipline at the end of the day of, this is my work schedule. These are things I want to get done, and then continuing to look at what you can offload onto your team members or what you can delegate to make it so you can focus on the things that you need to be on. That's definitely a challenge of mine too.
Yeah, and luckily too, if I tried the 100-hour weeks now, I probably wouldn't stay engaged. So there's like some accountability. Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely can't do 100
yeah.
hour weeks anymore. That's been a thing in the past for a long time for me.
And I just like don't have the endurance I used to, where I could. It used to be in my early 20s. I could just. Now I'm in my mid 20s. Yeah, that I could
Yeah,
just
and I'm in my
sleep for
mid
four
30s,
hours and
so
be fine. But that's not true anymore.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you'll hit a point where it's just that you figure out that happy spot and it changes.
yeah. Well, I got some meetings to prep for. Should kind of wrap up. Do you have any kind of final remarks?
Yeah, what you asked last week, what about the weekend or personal stuff? Let's ask you that one. What about personal stuff the weekend or other things you're doing outside of work, since we did say how we both have a little bit of a work addiction?
Yeah, you know what? I'll be honest. At least when I'm working a lot, I kind of just collapse and do nothing. I don't know if
Okay.
it'll be like Priscilla, my fiance, and I will just like watch like kind of trashy shows.
Okay.
The Because we just don't like drama in our real lives, so it's kind of fun to watch it on TV, I guess. The
Yeah, that's a fair way to put that.
but I honestly, I've really toned down my ambition on the weekends. I used to go, hiking and do, like drives and so on and so forth. But especially if work is intense, I kind of just don't do much at all. Like I'll try to force myself to do like one or two things, but nothing crazy. And I'm really bad about, like, cycling hobbies, whereas, I'll get into,
Oh,
cars, and
you'll
then,
flip one.
I had the cycle with the airplane that I thought was more long term than it was, and, at least I've got the discipline now to not spend a ton of money on those, like, cyclical hobbies, but the what it is literally month to month, 1 week it can be tennis, and the next week it can be rock climbing, and the next week it can be video games, and
Okay. Yeah.
what about you?
Have you sold the
Any
plane?
Oh man, I think with the plane, I just need to go down the fixing the logbook route on my own, because it's just gonna make it so much easier to sell. I just need to spend the 10, 15 grand to get it done, and then I think it'll be super easy, and then I'll probably recapture more than the plane is discounted doing it too.
Okay. Yeah. Put it on the check. There's your weekend task.
Yeah.
Clean up that old hobby.
Well,
Uh,
there's no FAA advisors or anybody to call on the weekend though. Yeah,
oh, that's true. I
yeah.
didn't think of that. Okay.
That's why
Yeah.
those
Well,
tasks
fun.
kinda run on late, and because it's always the business and home life, and then all of the other things kinda can slip through the cracks.
That happens.
Do you have any hobbies? I know you like to go chill out on the farm.
Yeah, family farm. I also like, just my weekends are pretty much the same typically. I kind of like doing a lot of the same things, which is weird. Saturdays I meet my dad for breakfast at the same spot. We kind of had this rule: you got to be there at 6:45 or basically 7, kind of in that range. And the only times you call and say, something is, hey, I'm not going to make it. Otherwise, we just show up and then we
Yeah,
go to our
that's cool.
family farm after that. So that's always my Saturday morning is time with dad, go to the farm. Uh, and it's weird. I like doing mindless physical activity. Like
Mhm.
having grown up on a farm, and like doing just physical work is oddly fun for me. So like if somebody's putting a retaining wall in that's local to Madison area, I'm more than happy to help on a weekend if I'm free. Like my buddies always call me, they're like, "Oh, it's just great. You always come." It's like, "Oh, this is awesome. I get a workout. I'm outside and I'm with my friends. Like
Yeah.
this is great."
I,
Where
I'm I'm with you on that because there's something about like I'm just thinking so much that physical activity will just kind of calm it all out. It lets you totally zone out. But so like over I think a couple days ago, I just decided, hey, I miss having a woodworking shop, and I have all the equipment, but it's like tucked into the corner. So I just started, rearranging stuff to get the little quick prototypes out the door rather than have sending a prototype to one of our machinists, and then it takes the roll of pie is long. They say it'll be 2 hours, and then 6 hours later the one part is done. Being
exactly.
able to mock up those quick little prototypes.
Yeah, that's for the farm this week. It was we've gone through some logging, so it was we're going through it's pretty grass seed. So I ran around the woods where you couldn't pull anything into it with a tractor. So I hand seeded acres and acres of forest where we're trying to get some seed going, and then we'll go in and plant trees next year.
Sweet. Well,
So
I should
it's
really
a
wrap
mindless
up. I got
task.
some proposals to
Yeah,
to get out.
you're right. Perfect. Thank you,
Cool.
Michael.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.